Imagine traveling back in time, not to a grand castle or a thrilling jousting tournament, but to the year 1348. What would daily life actually be like for an ordinary person? Forget what you've seen in movies. The reality was a lot grittier, a lot smellier, and frankly, a lot more uncomfortable. Let's peel back the layers of history and explore a world without showers, without toilet paper, and without many of the things we take for granted. First up, let's talk about staying clean. The idea of a daily shower would have been completely alien. Public bathhouses, a holdover from Roman times, were popular in some towns, but they weren't exactly the spa-like experience you might be picturing. They were social hubs, often crowded, and the water wasn't changed very often. For many people, a full body wash was a rare event, maybe happening only a few times a year. For day-to-day hygiene, you'd use a basin of water, often cold, to wash your hands and face. Soap existed, but it was a harsh, lye-based substance, usually made at home from animal fat and ash. It was more for laundry than for personal use. So, people walked around with a certain aroma. It was just the smell of life back then. Everyone smelled, so no one really noticed. Now, let's head to the bathroom, or what passed for one. Private indoor toilets were a luxury reserved for the absolute wealthiest lords and ladies, and even those were just a stone's seat over a chute that dropped waste into a moat or a cesspit below. These were called garderobes. The ammonia fumes from the waste were thought to repel moths, so people would hang their clothes in these toilet shafts. That's right, your closet was also your toilet. For everyone else, the options were far less glamorous. In towns, you might have a public privy, which was often just a wooden bench with holes over a shared pit. In the countryside, you'd just find a discreet bush. And what about toilet paper? It didn't exist in Europe. The Chinese had invented it centuries earlier, but the idea hadn't made its way west. So, what did people use? Whatever was free and readily available. If you were poor, that meant leaves, moss, grass, or even your own hand. Yes, the left hand was often designated for this purpose, which is why it was considered impolite to eat or greet someone with your left hand, a custom that still persists in some cultures today. If you were a bit wealthier, you might use scraps of old cloth or rags. The Romans had used a xylospongum, which was a sea sponge on a stick, but that practice had largely died out. The sponge was shared and just rinsed in a bucket of salt water or vinegar between uses. Let that sink in. Let's talk about your home. Forget central heating. The heart of the medieval home was the open hearth in the center of the main room. There was no chimney, just a hole in the roof to let some of the smoke out. I say some because these homes were constantly filled with smoke, stinging your eyes and coating everything in a layer of soot. It was warm, but it wasn't pleasant. The floors were usually just packed earth, sometimes covered with straw or rushes to help soak up spills, mud, and whatever else was tracked in. These floor coverings were rarely changed, so they became a breeding ground for pests and bacteria. Fleas, lice, and rats were constant companions. What about your clothes? Most people had only 1 or 2 outfits, made of rough wool or linen. You'd wear the same thing day in, day out, until it literally fell apart. Washing clothes was a major chore. You'd take them down to a river, beat them on a rock with a wooden paddle, and scrub them with that harsh lye soap. Because it was such an ordeal, laundry day didn't happen very often. Undergarments, like a simple linen shift, were washed more frequently, but the outer layers could go months without a cleaning. And then there was the food. If you were a peasant, your diet was monotonous. It was mostly bread, and not the nice fluffy kind we have today. We're talking about heavy, dark bread made from rye or barley, often called pottage. This was a thick stew of whatever vegetables were available: peas, beans, cabbage, onions, all boiled for hours in a cauldron over the fire. Meat was a rare luxury, reserved for feast days. And the water. It was often contaminated. That's why people of all ages, including children, drank what was called small beer or ale. The brewing process killed off most of the dangerous germs, making it safer to drink than water from the local well or river. The year 1348 is particularly significant because this was the year the Black Death, the Great Plague, arrived in England. Imagine this world I've just described, crowded, unsanitary, with limited medical knowledge, and now introduce a terrifying, fast-spreading disease. People had no concept of germ theory. They believed the plague was caused by bad air or miasma, or that it was a punishment from God. Doctors, in their beaked masks, stuffed with herbs, thought they could ward off the bad smells and the disease. It didn't work. The plague was carried by fleas on rats, which thrived in the dirty conditions of medieval towns and homes. In just a few years, it wiped out nearly half the population of Europe. It was a catastrophe on a scale that is almost impossible for us to comprehend today. Life in 1348 was a constant struggle for survival. It was a world of discomfort, disease, and an ever-present smell. It makes you appreciate the simple things, doesn't it? The hot shower you took this morning, the clean clothes you're wearing, the flush toilet down the hall. These aren't just conveniences. They are pillars of modern public health that have completely transformed our quality of life. So next time you roll up some soft toilet paper or turn on the hot water tap, take a moment to be grateful you weren't born in the Middle Ages. It's a fascinating period to study, but I think we can all agree it's a much better time to visit through videos than in person. Thanks for joining me on this trip back in time. If you found this glimpse into the past interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical periods you'd like to explore. See you next time.